First thing I do is wrap a little on this size. This is a size 6 hook, 030 lead. Do that by holding it back there like that, wrapping forward. You can add as much lead as you want. You can also use, this is real lead, you can also use tin to make it non-toxic. The other way to go is a tungsten bead or a tungsten cone. What I like to do is push that lead in the hole of the bead, big hole of the bead behind there to lock that in. I usually use 3/0 thread for my woolly buggers. Start my thread. I'm going to lock the lead into place, going back and forth several times. You don't want the lead to move at all. If it does, your fly tends to fall apart. So if I try to wiggle it and it doesn't move, we're in good shape. Go all the way back to the bend. And we're going to tie in a Marabou feather. This one's going to be brown. So I take the feather, pull all the fibers towards the tip like that. Measurement on a woolly bugger tail varies. Some people like them shorter, some people like it longer. I usually do a hook length long, so if I hold it here, it's in front of the eye to the back of the bend of the hook. So about the whole thing. I'm going to move that to the tail, tie that in there. Use a technique called pinch wrap up. Go between my fingers, pinch, go straight down. Tends not to spin the material around the hook shank. If you don't, sometimes it moves out of your way like that. So I'm going to tie that in securely right there at the bend of the hook. I like to use the feather to bulk up the hook shank. I hold my left finger on the other side of the hook shank, wrap forward. I'm going to wrap it to about where the lead is. Try to make that body a little more even. Secure that down, come up, cut it in one swipe like that. Then we're going to add a little flash to the tail. Flash material I like to use is Krystal flash. There's other stuff too. Mirage works well. In this case, the color is called Gray Ghost, which is pretty generic. You can use this on any color woolly bugger. You can also use pearl or pick one of the colors. They've got root beer, which would go good on brown, olive, peacock, that kind of stuff. You have to be careful with this. It's all twisted, so it tends to wrap amongst itself. So, you know, I don't really count, but I'll pull out 3, 4, 5 strands or so. Pull out about yay. And trim that off. And this is a good way to do it. I'm going to tie it in on each side of the hook shank. And it's going to be about even with the end of the tail. So first I tie it in on my side of the hook shank just like this. Wrap that in place. I'll wrap forward slightly. And then I'm going to grab the Krystal flash, pull it over to the other side, and tie that in so it's on the side of the hook. I'm going to trim it about even with the end of the tail. And with that clump, the extra that I cut off, you can use that for your next fly. Next thing I'm going to tie in is some chenille. This one happens to be variegated, which I like. Sometimes you can strip off the end like this to tie it in without as much bulk. On a big woolly bugger though, I find it doesn't matter too much. So tie that in securely. Right there where the tail starts, right at the bend of the hook. Wrap that down. I leave it on the card like that and wrap it, that way there's no waste. You'll see what I mean when I get done with this, wrapping the chenille. Some copper wire. Colors are up to your choice. I like to use red. So here's red copper wire. This is small, which just is easier to handle, especially when you're breaking it or cutting it. So I'm going to tie that in. One of the tricks I do is zigzag the copper wire as I tie it in. So that's tied in right there, back of the hook. I'm going to wrap my thread forward to behind the bead. And I'm going to start to wrap my chenille going forward. And you have to deal with the copper wire. And my right hand does most of this work. I'm right-handed. My left hand hangs out underneath the hook and just waits for my right hand to wrap the chenille around to it. Jam them together pretty tight to make a nice even body. Try not to crowd the bead too much. We got some stuff to tie in there. Tie that off right there. It's a technique I call a drop technique. I don't really drop it, I just set the bobbin on the other side. And I pull tight each wrap. So I'm going to trim that off. Make another wrap in there to get that tight.